The audit evidence is not simple. If you've never been through an audit, and I don't know whether you have or you haven't, actually making sure your documents are filled in correctly and up to date and will pass audit is actually super difficult for a lot of companies, right? It's not so easy. So the key takeaway from the new practice standards for me, anyway, was that you need to be you have to have your systems mapped to the practice standards from the 1st of July 2026, which means you have to actually be doing the things that it says, right? Not just have the documents, not just understand what's going on. You actually have to be operating to the practice standards, which for a lot of people I think is going to be quite difficult. And I'm concerned for a lot of smaller operators, and we're trying to build some systems around that to help them, but it's not so easy to do that. So, why is this happening? We probably all really know this anyway. SIL is high intensity. There's been little to no oversight over the past however many years since the NDIS has been operational. It's one of the most intensive supports in the scheme. Often it's got around the clock care, 24/7, 1 to 3, 2 to 3. The ratios are often quite high for supports around participants. And it's been provided by unregistered providers. So the Commission hasn't really had a lot of oversight. So that's all got to change. How many unregistered providers are there out there? I've heard the Commission say we think there might be 400 or 500 at a workshop that was held in Newcastle a month ago. My guess is there's thousands. I don't know whether they're really thinking about how many smaller operators will be caught in the new scope with SIL. So I think there's thousands. I don't think there's hundreds. I think it's in the thousands. I'm not going to go through these numbers because we all know it's been building since 2023. We've had ministers talk about it. There's been targeted consultation, and 1st of July the transition begins. So everyone's got to start to be registered or apply for registration. So what it really costs, I think this is one of the conversations that nobody's having with smaller providers. I'm just going to give you the headline model, and I'll read through this. It costs 30 to 40 grand over a 3-year period, is my experience, to have registration. So, I've got there the upfront on the left-hand side there, get registered. You've got to buy documents. You've got to get an internal audit done. All these things cost money. 3 grand's cheap because the documents are going to cost you 3 grand if you don't have them. 10 grand's probably more on the money because most people, I don't think, would get through their first audit without some kind of consultation or consultancy work behind them. And that's not including the time that you will have to spend yourself or your staff will have to spend. So it's time or money, right? There's money that you've got to spend on documents, audit fees, et cetera, and then there's the time. Hours, tens of hours, 40 hours, 50 hours, 70 hours. I don't really know. Everyone's different, right? But there's a lot of time required to get these audits done properly. So then you've got an 18-month midterm audit, which is, okay, so you've got the documents, you got through your first audit, you're registered. Are you actually using them? Can you prove that you're using them? Are your risk registers up to date? Are your incident reports being used? Are they being closed off? Like, this is difficult for a lot of people who aren't particularly focused on admin or compliance. The way I think about things in business is, in most cases, the people who are really good at facing out and talking to participants and dealing with them in that way probably aren't the right admin people, probably aren't the right compliance people. Tend to be different profiles. If you do a DISC profile or a Myers-Briggs profile or something like that, it generally doesn't fit it. The people who are really good facing out with people are really good and they're really good facing in. So that's a bit of a struggle, I think, for a lot of people. But you've got this midterm audit that you've got to prove you're doing the things that you say you are doing, which is, again, it's going to cost you 5 grand probably. 3.5 maybe for the audit, a little bit of consultancy, and then all the time. I think the last midterm audit, or one of the midterm audits we went through for one of our entities, I'm going to guess was 50 hours of wages or something like that, just to tidy stuff up and get prepared. It was probably more than that, to be honest, but it's, time and money again. And then at the 3-year stage, you've got a recertification audit. So that's a full renewal audit. So it's roughly the cost of your first one plus rescreening and refresher taking. So that's another 3 to 10 grand. It's another, all of the same, time and money issues that I spoke about before. It's tough, right? So $30,000 to $40,000, I think, is going to be the number that you have to have in your brain that it's going to cost you. And I've got down the bottom there, 15 to 25. I think that's pretty cheap. I'm thinking it's more like 30 to 40, but it's not nothing is my point, and you need to be prepared for it. And if I've got a bit of an issue with, and I made a comment yesterday on the commissioner's post on LinkedIn. Like I'm a huge fan of the changes, right? I think they're excellent. Credit where credit's due. I like them. My fear is, and this is what I've written at the top of this slide here. What about the small rural providers that maybe only have one participant or two participants? And they've been providing, really good quality care, relationship-based, really good quality care for years for people. Are they going to be able to afford, a 25 to 40 grand hit over 3 years? I'm not sure. So my real fear here is we're going to have hundreds, possibly thousands of very small operators who are now caught in the new SIL scope that will not be able to afford to register or pull the compliance together or to do all the things that they need to keep providing these supports. And if that happens, what happens to the participants, right? That's a huge issue for housing, safety, continuation of care. I'm not sure the Commission's really thought about this. Potentially they have. I don't really know, but that's my biggest fear. What happens to I reckon, thousands of small providers out there who have been doing a great job. So 7 steps to get compliant. Firstly, you've got to work out whether you're inside scope or not, which we'll talk about. You've got to know the standards, which they're not difficult to know. You've really got to know or run a gap analysis. Where am I now compared to where do I need to be on the 1st of July to the 1st of October? You've got to build your documents and systems. If you don't have them, you've got to have training, and you've got to be able to evidence that you trained your workforce. You've got to get your systems audit ready because they need to be. Otherwise, you won't pass your audits. And you've got to engage an approved quality auditor, which I think is going to be a bit of an issue as well, given the amount of people I think are going to be pushed towards registration. I think it's going to be hard to find a lot of auditors, and not all auditors are created equal, let me tell you. So they're the 7 steps. So I'm just going to go through them one by one. So what actually counts as SIL? The change in the definition is basically if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it is a duck. So if it looks like SIL, if it smells like SIL, then it is supported independent living. So, all the old ILO stuff that people used to run, all the stuff that wasn't, particularly itemised in the plan as supported independent living, in the line item is now caught as SIL. So what's likely in scope, and this is you're going to have to do this yourself and work out whether you're in scope or outside of scope, but I think you'll all probably be in scope. It's going to be pretty hard to not have any of these happening. If you're providing 24/7 support in a shared home, it's SIL. If you're rostering support in a participant's home, i.e. if you're actually doing the rosters for support in a participant's home, it's SIL. If there's sleepover, active overnight support, that's a bit of a no-brainer. If staff on regular shifts in a SIL-style house, so if you staff, people in, if there's 2 participants in a shared ILO situation, that's a SIL. Shared living with multiple participants and independent living support that is SIL in practice. So what may not be in SIL is obviously the community access stuff, the occasional domestic assistance or one-off care, COS, support coordination, all that sort of stuff is not in SIL. But this is probably a better description of what is going to be caught and what isn't going to be caught. So ask yourself these 6 questions. In the home, are you delivering support in a participant's home? Yes or no? Is it most or all of the day? Does the participant need support at all or most of the day? Now, that's not defined inside the practice standards. I'm going to say if a participant gets 2 hours of support a day, that's not most or all of the day. But if they get 4 or 5 hours of support for, every day, is that most or all of the day? I would think it probably is. Full package. Are you managing and delivering the full support package? That's going to catch a lot of people in SIL. You roster. Are workers rostered or coordinated by your organisation? If they are rostered by your organisation, that is SIL. Daily living and safety is, daily living, supervision, personal care, routines, safety, community access, probably all caught in SIL. If the numbers of hours that you're providing supports for and some of these other things fit in, it's SIL. So called SIL, obviously if it's in the PAPL as SIL, it is SIL, but there's a lot more people, almost everyone that's providing a reasonable amount of ongoing daily care is going to be caught in the new scope, I think. So you've got to decide whether you're in scope or not. Now, I put these together, a bit of a must do, should do, could do. That's how I think in my world. So must do, you must check your supports against the draft SIL definition and PAPL line items, and you must confirm your current NDIS registration status, right? So that's a bit of a no-brainer. Are you registered or not? Should do, review any service that looks like SIL in practice. Get advice if your model is borderline. I think you could probably tell if your model is borderline, you probably need to err on the side of caution and you are caught in SIL. Could do, confirm it online in minutes via the free BillNS Ready check. So we've got a gap analysis PDF document we'll give you, which is like a tick box. Do you have this? No, yes, partially, and you can go through that. And we have an online version of that which you can go through and it'll just spit out, and I'll show you that later on. But there's a couple of different ways you can do that, but you need to confirm if you are in scope. So what registered SIL providers must do. So registration is ongoing, not a one-off. 5 core obligations sit under it. So quality standards and audit, you've got to meet the core module plus the new SIL module. There's a two-stage certification audit. Suitability assessment, so key personnel need to be suitable. Checks before registration is granted. Worker screening, all workers must hold valid NDIS. Worker screening clearance, incident and complaint systems, reportable incident processes, obligations, etc. Ongoing reporting, transparent service agreements, and accurate records. So one of the things I want to make clear here, and I'm guessing because I don't know, to be honest, we got an email from one of our entities that's registered from the commission that said, we're about to change your line item from, the old line item to the new line item. Because your next audit is a certification audit or a renewal audit, we'll just do the audit then. My guess is if you're registered and you haven't gone through a midterm audit already, the next time you have an audit, you'll have to map against all the new SIL standards. I don't feel like they're going to automatically roll currently registered SIL operators who haven't done a midterm audit into the new line item without having to go through an audit process faster, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I know that that's what I would do if I was the commission, but we'll soon see. So here are the 4 new SIL practice standards. On top of the core module, so module 2A, and most people have those documents if you're registered already, you need to have some new documents, and those documents are wrapped around the new SIL practice standards, these new 4 modules, right? Number 1 is supported decision making, genuine choice and control over daily life and living arrangements. If you look through the documents, if you look through the practice standards, it's actually quite awesome. Participants are going to have a lot more say in what happens and will be supported a lot more in their decision-making process because you are going to have to prove it on multiple occasions that they did have say and they did understand, whereas in the past, a lot of that didn't happen in a lot of organisations. So super keen on, module 1, it's awesome. Module 2 is safeguarding, safety in shared homes, worker conduct, de-escalation, trauma, informed practices, PBS, etc. They're all good modules as well. The training in those is excellent. Every support worker should be trained in that anyway, and they should have been in the past, but it's now being mandated, which is great. Practice governance, number 3, so workforce systems, supervision and competency shown in every home. So the big changes are you will definitely have to prove everything. I think where the audits are going with the commission at some point in time, and this is me coming from a compliance background in the financial services industry, I think what's going to happen is they'll get to a stage where they go, Phil, we want this, we want these 7 participant files and we want them tomorrow, and they better pass. Like that would be from a participant's point of view and a family's point of view around safety and all that kind of stuff. That would be the preferred model. If I was, in charge of the auditing across all the provider network, I would do it that way if I could. So I would hope that the commission is moving towards that. I think that would weed out most of the providers who weren't doing the right thing pretty quickly. But anyway, so that's module 3, and module 4 is tenancy, housing, and support. So tenancy and support must be kept separate. Conflict of interest must be handled well. Tenant rights protected. So that was always coming. We all knew it. And those documents need to be separate. And, participants need to understand how that works, and you've got to be able to prove that participants need or that they understand how that works, which is great. So participant rights that auditors will focus on. So knowing the standards, choice and control. They've always had it, right? But it's been one thing to say that participants have choice and control, and it's been another thing to prove it. Now you're going to have to prove it. Supported decision making. So participants are supported to decide. They can't be decided for. Dignity of risk, the right to take reasonable risks. So over restriction is a compliance issue. This is a huge problem in most, I'm going to say, high level participant support provider networks. Over restriction is a compliance issue. Now, I get it. I get why people, were over restricting and worried about their participants taking risks and all those kinds of things. But that dignity of risk piece is awesome because the only way people learn is to make mistakes and to move on from them. So that dignity of risk piece, I think, is one of the key changes I'm really, really pumped about. Privacy in the home. So shared living must respect each person's privacy. It's your house. You get to say what happens in it. You get to have some privacy. That's fair. And tenancy and support separation. So tenancy is clearly separated from support delivery documents, which is fine, and complaints access. So raise complaints freely without fear of repercussion. So let's just, imagine you're an operator, you've been providing SIL for a couple of years unregistered, which there may be some on here, there may not be, but there's, thousands out there. And you might have good documents, which is great. So that's part of it. You've got to have good documents. Can you, if you go to audit today, do you have complaints on your complaints register that you've worked through and closed out? Do you have risks or incidents that have happened on your incidents register that have happened and that you've closed out? Because no auditor would think if you've been operating for a number of years or 6 months or whatever it might be, that you wouldn't have any of these things logged and documented. You would have incidents, you would have risks, you would have documents that would have had to have been used, and registers that would have had to have been used, and you're going to need to be able to show them. So I think that's going to be an issue for a lot of currently unregistered providers. They might have the documents, but they might not have the evidence that these documents are being used. So here's the must do, should do, and could do on step number 2. So must do, understand all 4 new SIL standards plus the core module. So, if you don't have documents for core module 2, 2A, get them. You're going to need top-up documents for the new SIL practice standards, which, we can sell to you, we can provide. You can get them from somewhere else probably, whatever, but you need to have them. Should do, map which standards touch your current practice, because everyone's different. We've all got different businesses. Note the participants' rights, the areas that auditors are going to focus on, really try and understand what the auditor is going to look for, and could do brief your team or board on what's coming. Obviously, that's a bit of a must-do, should do as well, but plenty of people probably won't do it. So from us, if you want to book a 15-minute call, we'll walk you through all of this stuff and talk about anything you want to talk about. There's links when you get the PDF sent to you. There's links in the PDF you can do all this with if you need to. So step number 3, run a gap analysis. So on the left-hand side here, I don't know who's going to drop this PDF into the chat. Won't be me, but somebody will. And if we don't drop it into the chat, that's fine. We'll email it to you. But I developed a PDF gap analysis, which is, I don't know how many pages it is, 6, 7 or something like that. But literally it's a, do you have this? Yes, no, partially, make some notes. Do you have this? Yes, no, partially, make sure you have notes. So it's an incredibly useful physical document if that's how you want to, try and do your gap analysis. And the idea is that, so we're using that for providers who are looking to get consultation from us around what to do and how to fix their gaps. They're filling that in, they're sending it back, right? But you don't have to send it back. You can just use it for your own benefit, but it's free. Make sure you get that. And what it covers all the core modules plus the 4 new SIL standard modules. So, be brutal with yourself about what you do and you don't have is my coaching around this. Don't bury your head in the sand and think everything's going to work out, because there are 100% there's going to be gaps in what you currently are doing and what you should be doing in 10 or 15 days or however many days we've got till the 1st of July. So it covers governance, risks, incidents, complaints, continuous improvement, all the things that auditors look for, all the documents, core policies, new SIL standards, workforce, participant, worker, house files, agreements, and property, right? It's got everything in there. It's a really good document. So you can work through that document and that will get dumped in the chat, or we've developed, and we've been developing this for a while. We've got some, well, there's two sides to this. So I'll go on, I'll talk about this a little bit more later on, but we've got some software, some SaaS, and some gating worker compliance kind of all built for SIL. But long story short, you can jump onto billy.com.au, which is on the top right-hand side where the QR code is. There's a button on there that says free readiness check. And if you go into that readiness check, which is on the screen here on the left-hand side, answer the questions, it's pretty well got our gap analysis PDF document built into the back of that, plus some other stuff. So if you add all your details in there and, be honest about it all, it'll actually spit out. And there's an example on the right-hand side where you are, where you actually sit, so your readiness score. But more than that, it does a pretty good job at telling you, okay, so you don't have this document, you do have that document, you haven't got this process or that process. We think it's going to cost you this much money to actually get to a point um, where your SIL business is compliant. Is it perfectly accurate? No. Does it give you a relatively good, insight into what damage financially you're up against? It does. Like we've got a lot of data that's been built into that. So anyway, you can do it through the PDF, or you can jump onto billy.com.au and do the readiness check, which is live as we speak. I don't care what you do, you just need to find out where your gaps are and you need to fill them. So once you've run the gap analysis, here's the must do, should do, and could do. You must complete that gap analysis so you know where you are, and you've got to set a target audit ready date. But the reality is you also must, on the 1st of July, be operating to the new practice standards. So you should, in theory, have documents that map to those practice standards, and if you don't, you need them. You should, in theory, have your workers trained around those new 4 modules in that practice standard. Now, if you don't do that, I don't really know what the Commission's going to do about that, or what kind of breaches they might, impose on people, or what leniency they're going to have. I think probably little to none is going to be the answer. So, not to be the big scary guy telling you all that you need to be doing something, but you need to be doing something. Because when you go for your audit, they will probably, most likely, I would, if I was the auditor, I'd go back to the 1st of July and say, prove to me that you have the documents, prove to me that your workers have been trained, prove to me that you're operating from the 1st of July to the new SIL practice standards. And if not, you will probably get a breach. Now, getting a breach isn't, life and death for a lot of providers. There's some things that do go wrong in businesses, and that's just how it is. But nobody knows how the Commission's going to view this, but I would suggest that you should be thinking they will breach you, because I think they probably will. So you should prioritise gaps by risk and effort, decide to build it yourself versus get help per gap, right? So, I personally, I've got a compliance background, 35 years in financial services. It's not going to be difficult for me to think about what I need, where I need to go from here to here to build my gap analysis out and to close that gap. For a lot of other people, I don't know whether that's going to be a simple thing or not. I know, having personally gone through a number of audits through a number of different entities in the NDIS, it ain't easy getting through an audit well. So, knowing what I know, for most people, 80-20 rule, 80% I think of people are going to need some help, going to need to get a consultant behind them and to get some help. Right, so next, we're done step 3. Step 4, build your documents and systems. So this is what I was talking about. So I think this is where most providers have the biggest gap, the SIL specific layer and keeping the tenancy and support legally separate. You must have documents and they must be ready by the 1st of July, is my coaching around this. So on the left-hand side here, we've got SIL policies aligned to the 4 new standards, participant, worker and house file templates that match those new standards, supported decision-making and safeguarding tools, registers, checklists and audit evidence tools, accessible format versions of key documents, right? So all of those things really should be in place by the 1st of July to map to the standards so you are complying with the new standards. And on the right-hand side, agreements and conflict of interest, so separate service agreement and tenancy agreements, service agreements covering the 6 tenancy matters, COI policy for SIL, so Centers of Influence policy for SIL, tenancy, dual role, or conflict of interest. Sorry, that's what the COI stands for. Document control with version and review dates. This is one of the things that kind of tripped me up the first time I went through an audit. The whole document control with versions and review dates. Like I have them, and we had them, but I wasn't really super clear that they'd be so important, from an auditor's perspective, but they are. You've got to have those things. So build your documents and systems, ready to go documents. So we've built out a SIL Practice Standards update pack. It's $1,000 plus GST. So lots of you who are currently registered would probably have core documents, and that's fine. You can use your core documents that you've had. Great. You really do need to have this update pack. So whether you do them yourself, build them yourself, I don't really, it doesn't really matter how you do it, but you need to have them. So we've done that pack. It's $1,000. It's good. It's got all of the core policies and procedures, participant file templates, SIL home file templates, worker file templates, governance and audit tools. So you just pick that up basically. They're templated. You can put your business details on there, and you can start to use them tomorrow. They're ready to go, and they've been written well. I wrote them myself. I know what I'm doing, and they're excellent documents. So what's in the pack? All those things I said: core policies and procedures, all the worker file templates, governance and audit tools, PDF versions, and a read first guide to the master pack. So if you don't have any documents at all and you're an unregistered SIL provider, you're looking at $3,500 to get documents up and running. So $2,500 is about the money for the core 2A, module 2A documents. So that's like $2,500 for module 2A, and then that top up pack for $1,000. So $3,500 it's going to cost you for documents. And again, whether you get them from us or somebody else, that's probably going to be about the money. So what to do? Must do, should do, could do. So must do. SIL, you must have SIL aligned policies, registers, and file templates by the 1st of July in 12 days or 10 days. What have we got? 19th. Yeah. Separate tenancy and service agreements. So you've got to have those all in place, signed, sealed, delivered, if you want to comply with the new standards. What you should do, you should have accessible format versions, version control with review dates. You should have pre-built audit evidence folder structures, and you could obviously get a done for you document package to save you weeks. Would it take you weeks? It would take you some time, depending on who you are, to put those together for sure. So, we do it for $1,000. I don't know what everyone else is charging, but I think that's pretty reasonable in the market. Or if you don't have any documents at all, it's a $3,500 hit for the module 2A, and the new SIL practice standard docs. Step 5, train and evidence your workforce. So experienced workers aren't the same as evidenced workers. The Commission has made it clear in the new practice standards that you must train your workers and you must have evidence that you have trained your workers. Now, how you do that is totally up to you as a provider, sure, but it has to be done, right? And that has to be done to the new practice standards. Otherwise, you're not compliant. You're non-compliant with the new practice standards. So it's mandatory for all SIL workers, and when we're talking SIL workers, SIL-like workers. So almost everyone who is caught inside this new scope must be trained and must be educated on the 1st of July. Now you can do it yourself, and you can probably, do some good training and write some good evidence that they've been trained. It doesn't really matter, but you just have to do it. So we've put some training together. I'll talk about that in a minute. But on the left-hand side, they must be trained in de-escalation techniques. That's part of the practice standards. Trauma-informed practice, positive behaviour support, active support, and supported decision making. And you must evidence it. That's the piece that you really need to understand is compulsory and mandatory. You must have obviously NDIS worker screening for all staff. It's a bit of a rookie mistake when you go through audit. When you first start your business, everyone's got their worker screening check, and sometimes when you go to audit, some of them have run out and you haven't got it together enough to know that they have run out, and it can be a problem, right? This is a thing we see often with providers. You really want, this is my opinion, certificates on file for each worker that they've done some kind of training. That needs to be competency assessed, not just attendance. You can't just turn up and do some training and get you've attended the training, happy days. It's got to be competency assessed. Training register with refresher dates. So you need to have that as a provider. You need to have a training register with refresher dates on it. And in some of these trainings, you probably need to have supervisory competency sign off. So it's not, it's a thing that really needs to happen for everyone. So the training is live. We've built the training. We built it off the same platform we did all the support coordination training. So it's off a Learn Worlds platform, which is like a global learning kind of portal. So it's pretty good. It's live. It's online. We've priced it what we think is reasonable. So the way we've pitched it is you can enroll a single worker for $249. So if you're a provider, basically what it says is when you go online and you look at it all, buy the $249 package. If you're happy with it and you want to upgrade to a 10 pack or a 25 pack or a 50 pack or whatever it might be, we'll just refund that $249. So when you go to 25 or more training seats on the package, I think it works out about $100 each. So $100 per SIL worker for them to go through a pretty. It's not difficult, but you know, it's in depth and it's excellent, and they will know what they're doing by the end of it, right? I wrote this training, and not that I'm saying I'm the best at writing training or anything like that, but I know it's good. It is good. It's evidence based. It's competency based. You get a certificate at the end. All of the modules are covered off, and I tried to make it as user friendly as possible from a pricing point of view. So $100 for any kind of volume, I think is probably on the money for that. And lots of you probably don't understand the training model or how that works, but there's a lot of bandwidth on the back end of training with, inquiries, and you've got to have people dealing with stuff. A lot of admin on the back end of training. So, we'll make okay money on that, but there's still a lot of bandwidth of stuff that we have to fund on the back end to be able to even offer that training at $100 a piece. So the training's there, it's ready to go. You get a certificate at the end. You can essentially keep in your worker files for your audits and supervision, and it's excellent. I guarantee it. So train and evidence your workforce. Must do worker screening for all staff. That's has always been the case. Mandatory SIL training completed and certified. How you do that, up to you. We've got that $100 version for bulk, but you could probably do it yourself if you're clever. But it needs to be competency assessed and recorded. You really need to be able to prove that they've been trained and that they are competent. So you should have a training register with refresher dates, and you most likely should have supervisory competency sign off for some of these modules. And could do, like, if you're a larger org and you want 50 or 100 or 250 seats or whatever it might be, we can do LMS or SCORM or white label for scale. And what that means is some larger organizations have a learning management system, an LMS, and they need that inside their system and they don't want our branding on it. And that's fine. We can do all that. It's ready to go. If that's you, just reach out to us and we can go from there. But that's the training, something you must do. Step number 6, what auditors will actually look for. So auditors want evidence that the systems are in use. They don't want folders on a shelf. They want to see that you're filling stuff in. They want to see complaints registers and outcomes that have been recorded. They want to see incident registered, actions closed out, risk framework actively maintained, work screening, induction, training matrices, like supervision notes, emergency drills and plans, like all those things. They will want to see them, and they will call your participants, and they will make sure that those things are accurate. You really do need to have some of those things on your on your list to make sure that they've been used. So that's the core module evidence. On the SIL specific side, the right-hand side, obviously participant files and individual support plans, participant consent and risk reviews, service agreements, clear, current and signed. The amount of unsigned service agreements that sit out there in NDIS land, I think, would shock most people. Yeah, so you really do need to have your service agreements clear, current, and signed by the right people. Tenancy docs need to be separated from the support docs, and a lot of the time they haven't been in the past. House meeting and roster of care records SDM in practice. So you've got to have all this stuff operational and actually being used. We've developed some software, so whether you think it's clever or not, we've got Billy and we've got Gene. Billy is a a pathway for unregistered providers to operate under a registered entities model and be as compliant as they possibly can be, because a registered entity runs all the compliance, and Gene is the CRM rostering frontline compliance. So when you go through, if you're unregistered and you're not ready to get registered yourself and you choose the Billy pathway, another registered entity runs the compliance and runs all the things that the Commission would want a registered entity to run, right? And that's the Billy pathway. It's gated by this software called Gene that we've developed, and it sits inside that Billy pathway. So if you go that way, that's you. But if you're already registered and you don't need any kind of pathway for registration like that, you can just use Gene as your CRM rostering and frontline compliance. And basically what it does is you can't roster a staff member on it if all their documents and checks haven't been done. It will gate everything that the Commission, that the new SIL Practice Standards has said are mandatory. It will gate against all that. So it's a compliance machine. So this is a system that we feel, and we've been building this for a long time, right? And we just released it, it's ready to go. So Gene connects rostering, file notes, worker evidence, participant and house records, incidents, billing and audit evidence, and it gates compliance so workers can't be rostered without current valid evidence, right? So that's an option for you. Do you have to take it? No. Can you use other softwares and manual documents? You sure can. But if you want to read more about that, it's on the Billy site. So just go to billy.com.au and the information about Gene is on there. So there's some prices here. Basically, we've tried to price it again super competitively. So $10 per active support worker in the houses, $40 per admin per month, with a minimum $199 per month setup. So if you're a small provider, there's a minimum. You can go enterprise, you can go white label. We can do whatever we want. We've got a good technical team behind it. And if you're an unregistered provider and you're not ready to register yourself, you can think about using the Billy pathway, because a separate entity handles that registration compliance stuff for you. So yeah, Billy and Gene are awesome. They're there for you if you want. I should say, actually, one of the things we're probably going to do with Gene is you can get in for free and start to use Gene for free for your first house. So you can set up a house under Gene and see how it runs, see how it operates. I'll just go back to, like, so you can jump into this platform and set up your rosters and set up your people and see what compliance issues you got and what gets gated. And the current thinking, the way we're going to market is, so you only start paying basically when you go live or in 30 days time. So it's like a 30-day free trial basically. Unless you go live and then we start charging you, but you've got 30 days to play around with it, do one house and have a really good look at Gene and see if it's going to suit you or not. So must do, should do and could do's on step 6, incident and complaint risk systems live with real records, and you have to be able to prove it to auditors. So that's a must do. SDM and safeguarding evidence, emergency plans rehearsed, all that kind of stuff needs to be done. Should do regular governance review, continuous improvement linked to incident data, and could do, obviously, you can roll into a compliance gated system. So for us, the reason we built Gene and Billy was that if we want to scale and have multiple houses and do anything in that frontline space with SIL or ILO or anything that we were interested in doing, because I should say, accommodation stress is probably the biggest stress, I reckon, of most participants in the NDIS, right? So it's a beautiful thing, that whole SIL space, ILO space. We really love it, but it's difficult to be compliant when you've got a bunch of houses and a bunch of, you've got 50 support workers and who's got the right documents, who hasn't got the right documents. And it's a tricky thing to manage. So from our perspective, we built Billy and Gene for ourselves, I suppose, originally, but we're always going to take it to market for others. But it was something that we felt like we needed to do the job well from our end and be compliant. And if you're interested in talking about Billy or Gene, you could just book a call, talk to one of the team. You might even get lucky and talk to me. So step number 7, the application versus the audit. So the application is the gateway, the audit evidence is the real work. So let's just talk about unregistered providers. So unregistered providers have to have an application in or be engaging with the Commission around it by the 1st of October, right? So 1st of July, in 10 days or whenever it is, you need to be operating. as per the new practice standards. So have the documents, have the training done, and be operating to the new practice standards. You then have until October to after that application goes in, essentially you'll have to engage an auditor once you get scope, and you'll have to be able to prove that you've been using and operating to those practice standards since 1st of July. If you're registered, the email that we got from the commission was that, here's the old line item. We're going to roll you into the new line item and we'll audit you at your next renewal audit. I think if you've never gone, like I said before, I think if you're currently registered and you've never been through a midterm audit, most likely they will think, all right, so you've never had to evidence anything yet. So we're going to just stick you in that. We're not just going to roll you over into the new registration group. We're going to make you go through jump through some kind of hoop to prove that you are actually using the systems that you say you are using. I could be wrong. I might be wrong. I don't know. That's a guess, but that's kind of where we're all at. So once you do the application, you've got to go through a stage 1 and stage 2 audit. So stage 1 audit is like what they call a desktop audit. So, the auditor will jump in and look at all your documents and make sure you've got all your stuff. And that's not overly difficult, I suppose, to get through, particularly if you've never been operating, because you don't have to have any documents that have anything on them. But if you have been operating, you really should and would have some incident registers and some risk registers and some stuff that's happened in your business. And it will need to have been itemized, and you will need to be able to prove that it's been closed off and you've worked through whatever your documents say that you're going to work through, right? So that's the stage 1 desktop audit. They're going to have a look at your documents. And stage 2 audit is they're going to come on site. They're going to talk to your participants. They're going to call a bunch of people you work with. They're going to talk to your staff. They're going to make sure that your documents are in order. And it isn't easy. Nor should it be easy, particularly in a high risk environment like SIL, like supported independent living. So that's kind of the application versus the audit. And then at the end of the day, the auditor does all that and then submits a submission to the commission, and the commission makes the final registration decision. Critical dates in your pathway. So I would say right now, gap analysis against your core and your draft SIL standards. So there's 4 new modules. So now between now and June, you got to get it together, get your systems together, get your files together, get your training together, and get ready. So from July to September, book your stage 1 and stage 2 audit, engage with the commission, make sure your application's in, all that sort of stuff has to happen by the 1st of October. I would think that it's going to be difficult to book auditors in as well. I think that's going to be a real supply demand issue there. And I can also imagine that prices might go up substantially. Could be wrong. Don't think I am. And then pathway 2, if you're currently registered under the 0115 registration group, delivering SIL, you may have your certificate updated to 0138. So that's what's happening with the entity that we have that's registered. The email we got was, you've just been through a certification or a renewal or whatever it was at the time. We're just going to roll you to the next one on 138, no problem. But you still, obviously, we've got to comply with the SIL standards from 1st of July 26, which we're going to do through our SaaS and gated software. Billy and Jean makes it like very difficult not to comply with the new standards, and we're going to get audited against the new SIL modules at the next relevant audit, which is fine. So check the Reform Hub on the NDIS for your specific pathway. There's a lot of stuff on the Commission website that's good. The stakes and what doesn't change. So be super clear-eyed about consequences. There are penalties. There's 40 grand's worth of fines. There's 2 years imprisonment. How hard are the Commission going to go on people? I've got no idea. That's a guess. I would imagine there would be some reasonable amount of leeway for people who are trying to do the right thing. I can also imagine a few people will be made examples of that aren't doing the right thing. So I don't really know what's going to happen in that space, but I suppose we'll know more in 90 days. The impact on participants. So the NDIS has said that the funding plan and goals will not change for participants. They should ask their provider, are you planning to register or not, so they can get a heads up on what's happening. If not, plan to transition to a registered provider and I think rural and remote participants need to act earlier than metro because there are fewer opportunities. I'm going to revert back to my original, pitch on my fear is there will be 1,000 small providers that won't register, um, which is unfortunate. And I'm not quite sure how those participants are going to deal with that moving forward. So I think there's going to be a bit of a shockwave rolling through the industry. And if I was a participant, I'd really want something in writing from my provider about whether they're going to register or not, so I could make some informed decisions about whether my current SIL living arrangement or ILO or shared, whatever it might be, even supports on a regular basis in my home, whether they're actually going to transition into the new practice standards. So number 7, must do, should do, and could do. So 100% engage and audit early. Got to lodge your application by the 1st of October. If you're not registered, and you have to complete your stage 1 and 2 audit. If you are registered, you'll probably roll into the new registration group, or some other email will come out if you haven't gone through a midterm audit or a full certification audit. Should do, plan for continuous compliance, not a one-off. This is, speaking to my point before, I think at some point the Commission are going to say, give me 10 files, give them to me tomorrow, and you're going to live and die, your business will live and die on whether they're compliant or not. I don't think that's a bad thing. So I think that's where it's heading. That's my hope. That would weed out almost everyone who's not doing the right thing pretty quickly. But will that happen tomorrow, in 2 months, in a year? Who knows? But I think that's what's going to happen. But you should plan for it. And could do high touch urgent transition support if you're behind. So we've got some providers that just don't have anything in place. And I'm happy to pull my team off to do things for them, but it's $25,000. Like, I'm not going to do it for nothing. And it's going back even a year or 2 years, like, it would have cost us $16,000 to engage a consultant to help us to do some stuff back then when there was no urgency or risk involved. So it's not cheap to do the registration piece, is my point. So yes, we can do urgent SIL transition support. You can do whatever you want really, but at a price. Your options at a glance. So I've done a one pager for everyone. So number 1, confirm your scope. We've got that free PDF. Yeah, that's tough. One participant that we provide support in the home, Michelle. That's a tough one. I wouldn't think that you're going to spend 30 or 40 grand over 3 years to be registered. So, you're going to have to do some kind of something with a provider that offers something like the Billy platform, I would imagine. But your options at a glance, confirm the scope. So that's the PDF we can send to you, or you can jump onto billy.com.au and do the readiness, assessment. Know the standards, that's not difficult. You just read the standards, go through the standards, gap analysis, do all that. That's all free. Documents, if you've got the core documents already, that's great. Keep them. $1,000 to get the top-up docs. If you need to train your workforce, it's basically $100 in bulk, or $249 for one person. We can do all that for you. Operate in evidence, so you can use the Billy and Gene platform, however that suits you, whether it's using a registered provider pathway and you're not registering yourself, but it's still being, forced to be compliant. So you do all the front end, we do all the compliance, or you can use Gene for your own business. Either, it can be white labeled, it can be commercially done on a large scale. It doesn't really matter, but it's a good platform for SIL. And then you've got to have some kind of ongoing, ongoing stuff from auditors and consultants and bits and pieces over the years. And then if you're way behind and don't know anything and you need an enormous amount of help to get you up and running, it's going to be $25,000 to get us to even look at it, because we're super busy. So here's your audit readiness checklist. So number 1, tick, 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 confirm the scope. Number 2, know the standards. Number 3, the gap analysis. Number 4, documents and systems. Number 5, workforce. Number 6, operate and audit ready. Number 7, AQA, apply and sustain. So that's the 7 steps that I've come up with, having spoken to many, many people over the past few weeks about it all, and having done a number of these presentations. This is where I'm at now. I'm trying to make it super simple. There's 7 things you need to get your head around, and these are what they are. So questions most providers have been asking for us. Do you have to register? You sure do. It's an offence not to become registered and keep operating a SIL business. I'm already registered. Does this affect me? Yes, it depends on my thinking is it will depend on whether you've gone through a midterm audit or a certification audit, a 3-year audit, on what the commission does. Like I said, we got an email for our entity that said, happy enough to roll all this into the next certification audit because you just went through one. Key dates, 1st of July, you got to be operating to the standards. 1st of October, got to have your application in to be able to keep delivering during the transition. What if you don't register? It's an offence, could go to jail for 2 years, $39,000 fine or something like that. There are no grandfather clauses, and participants will have to move to another provider. What does it cost? Anywhere for the first round from 3 to 10 grand, and probably 5 to 10 grand every 18 months from then on. That's where the 25,000 or 30 to 40,000 over a 3-year cycle comes from. And can anyone guarantee I'll pass? No. We'll help you prepare and evidence your systems. The auditor and the NDIS commission make the decision. What actually happens is, if you go through an audit and you have things that aren't right, breaches or, rectifications or whatever they might be, whatever the language the auditors and commission use at the time, you generally do have time to rectify those. It's not like they're terrible or they're horrible people or a horrible organisation. They do give you time to rectify all those, and we would work with you through that if that happened, but it would be unlikely to happen if we're involved in the process moving up to an audit. But you never know. Every audit is different, so there can't be any guarantees. No one can guarantee you anything. All they can probably guarantee, and I see some of this out there in the marketplace, is, we'll guarantee to keep working with you and get you through until you're registered. Well, we would do the same. Everyone would do the same. I think the biggest risk for most people is, are you a person that the commission wants as the owner of a registered provider? I think a lot of that's going to be how they decide moving forward. Key terms, I've whacked a few key terms in there so that you can, if you don't know what some of these things are, you can work out what they are. There's some key resources here from the horse's mouth, the NDIS Commission Reform Hub. They've got SIL transition pathways on there. You can go to the commission and get the AQA, find an auditor. There's provider registration guides. You can ring the NDIS Commission on those numbers. And you can use this briefing and the Billy portal to try and get where you are, or use the gap analysis or whatever you might be. They're accurate. I rate them. I'm really reasonably comfortable that they're accurate. Could I have missed something? Sure. Have I missed something? I don't think so. So not sure which step you're on? Give us a ring. Basically, book a call, talk to one of our people. Make sure you get a copy of the documents here. Read them, and make some kind of decision about what you're going to do, because it's, you've got 11 days, 10 days, 12 days or something is where we're all at. So that's the presentation. I know there was a lot in there. I know I ramble on a lot and I speak probably faster than most people would prefer. I tried to deliver it in a way that I thought was appropriate for everyone, but feel free now, if you choose to ask any questions. You can put your camera on, you can unmute, you can ask whatever stupid question you think you might have. I don't really mind. It's not going to freak me out if you ask a question that I can or can't answer. So feel free.